Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Crash Course. I'm your host, Morgan Cole, and thank you for joining me today. Our topic today is going to be real estate analysis, putting it all together. We just concluded a 3-part series that has to do with cap rate, cash on cash, and internal rate of return. And we're going to take what we learned over the last 3 episodes, look for some houses, and do some analysis. So stay tuned for that. With me, as always, is our wonderful co-host, Kristen Lopez. However, she is remote today. Welcome, Kristen.
Hi, Morgan. Thank you so much for having me join you once again on a wonderful real estate crash course episode. It is a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm excited that you're here. I'm looking forward to getting this next episode here put together because I really want to put to use everything that we've learned over the last couple of few episodes.
Absolutely. I think that I know that I'm very excited for this episode today because this is going to bring together the last 5 episodes that we've done and really kind of give us a realistic look of how we start to use these numbers in real life and really just bringing all of it together, the full picture. So I think it's going to be a great episode today.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's exactly what it is. It's bringing the full picture into play. We've talked about why you would do this. We've talked about the bits and pieces of how you would do it, or the
Mhm.
metrics you would use, rather. But now we're going to apply those metrics and more. So anyway, well, before we dive straight in, I want to continue our conversation about the latest with dumb devices. What do they call? What do we say they call not? It's a smart device. It's a dumb device, maybe. Um,
Maybe.
what did they call them
Maybe. I
anyway?
don't remember,
The
but I have
e-ink
exciting
tablet.
news, Morgan.
Yeah,
Yes,
tell
ready?
me. Yes,
You ready? I ordered myself a Remarkable yesterday and it will
I
be
love
here
it.
in just 3 days. Like it was very quick shipping. And I was like, well, okay, that's fantastic. I got a text today that said it's on the way. And I was like, oh, I'm so excited. So I am super pumped to stop with all of my notebooks that I have and get it all digitized into one place, but still feel like I'm taking notes. So I'm very excited for my tablet to come in.
I love mine. I love my Remarkable too. It is it is like writing in real life, but you just, like if you're writing and you kind of get to the bottom, you just scroll up and your page just magically has more. And you can erase and you can highlight and move stuff around. And I've never, I mean, taking notes doesn't exactly waste paper, but I'm so quick to just be like, I'm going to write this down because I have my Remarkable, and I just start writing. So I can't wait to, since you are such an avid note taker, I can't wait to hear how it works out for you.
I thought you were gonna say, "I can't wait for you to send me all of your notes after our meetings."
Well, there you go. That too. There's the added benefit here that I feel like you'll be so quick to share the information, but I also just can't wait to hear how much you love having the Remarkable. So that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah,
So
I'm super excited, and I hope
excellent.
that, all of the salespeople at Remarkable are fans of the real estate crash course, so then,
I don't
they'll
know why
just
they
give us
wouldn't be.
credits back. I know, and then they'll just send us new Remarkables every time that they come out and give us all the upgrades.
I'll take it. I'll take it and I'll keep plugging it. So anyway, all right. Well, all right. So let's think about this for a second here. Let's dive into real estate. So we are going to analyze a house or a couple of houses, something like that. And I want to use Discover to do that naturally. And
It's a
so for
great
those of you,
platform to use
it
to do it.
it would definitely do the job. If a person is watching on YouTube, this will be pretty easy to follow along. If you're listening, it's okay. We will still talk about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and this will still make sense. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the MLS search on Discover, and I want to look in an area where I am not. So, we're going to go to Indiana, and I'm going to type in 46208. So,
And so while you're pulling this up, this is just to confirm for everybody listening and not watching. You're pulling up active MLS properties in,
yep,
where did you say again? Did you say Indiana?
Indiana. So this is in
Indiana.
the Indianapolis, Indiana, listed on MIBOR,
Okay.
MIBOR. I can't remember what the M stands for. Metropolitan Indiana Board of Realtors, maybe Metro, something like that. But yeah, these are listed on MIBOR.
Okay,
So
so we're going to be talking about real properties
real
today.
properties. So we're taking the theories that we talked about prior to today, and we are putting them into action. So what I see here on my screen is an outline of that zip code. It's just a random zip code, 46208. I mean, I know that that zip code's in Indianapolis, but I'm not
Mhm.
really. I have no motivation here other than I just wanted to look there. Um, and I am going to look at the very first house. So what it gave me was my search results, and I'm kind of glancing at these, but the search results are not really that important. I just see a house. It's listed for $225,000, and it's telling me so far, without me taking any tweaks or anything into consideration, that this house has a 6.6% cap rate and an 11.4% internal rate of return.
Wow.
Now, those are good numbers. I mean, those are good numbers based on what we're seeing in the market right now. Prices are up, so some of these numbers are a little lower than they used to be, but compared to the alternatives, that's a good one. And so I want to open it up, and I want to start checking some things out. So when I first click on the property, what I'm greeted with here are some kind of like the highlight view. It's telling me that it's listed for $225,000 and that it would rent for $1,875. The first thing we need to do as real estate investors or professional is think, hey, should we pay 225 for this? Would it really rent for 1875? Now, admittedly, I am not really an expert at properties in the Indianapolis area, so I'm going to take this thing at its word, and I'm going to assume that it is both worth 225 for sale and 1875 for rent. Now,
And I mean, that seems pretty reasonable because if we look at the specs on the property, it's a two-bedroom, two-bathroom house, but it looks like I think I saw square
it's
footage down there of like
1700.
1,700,
Yeah. Yeah,
which
which
seems like
is
it has like a huge living room or something.
it does. It has large rooms. It looks like it's
Oh, that's a
updated
nice
nicely.
kitchen. That's a
Yeah,
very nice kitchen.
I would think that you could convince me, being a couple of thousand miles away from this property at least, that this thing should absolutely rent for 1875. So
Yeah.
let's uh let's just assume that that's the correct number. Now let's see here. Let's check. Before we go adjusting any of the parameters on this, and before we think about what we might need to verify, let's talk about what the numbers are and what they mean to us. Right now, it's
Mhm.
telling me it's a 6.6% cap rate. Now, let's just really briefly go back to that. Cap rate would only be considering if you paid cash for the house. So we are thinking it's just the relationship of the net operating income to the purchase price. Okay, no financing, doesn't take into consideration the down payment. Now I have this thing configured to where I'm going to put a 25% down payment into it. So if we move over to the cash on cash return, it's 0.8%. Um,
Looks pretty low
Pretty
compared to the
low
other numbers.
compared to the other numbers. So, Kristen, what do you think if I told you that you could buy this property and it would basically break even or make a very small amount of money in the first year, but it's not going to pay you like a 5 or 10% cash on cash return? Based on what we've talked about in the past and the things that you know about this, are you still interested in this property?
I am still interested in the property because I would be looking more for a long-term hold, and then I think that maybe I might need a little bit more information before I can just answer that because, the savvy investor in me is like, "It's 1875 now, but what's it gonna go up to next year?" And
There you
really
go.
looking at the long term, that would be where my mind would go immediately is, "Okay, I'm fine if you tell me that I'm not going to make money in the first 3 years." if I can know that years 4 through 30 are going to make me a lot more money, that's where my mind initially goes. So seeing that as not being super high initially, I think that I would be okay with, because the cap rate looked okay. And then also our IRR looked pretty decent. So I'm still like, okay, 2 out of 3. I think that I want to know more about this property.
Yeah, no, that's a perfectly reasonable answer. I mean, you also said I'm in it for the long haul. I'd rather be
Mhm.
concerned about year 4, 5, 6. So we're only looking at the very first year right there. We'll talk about the multi-year cash on cash in a second, but I just wanted to look at the information that's in front of us. And I think you already mentioned that the next number is a lot larger, but the internal rate of return is 11.4. Not the highest I've ever seen, but by far not the lowest I've ever seen. So yeah, so that's what we have so far. Now I want to make a couple of small adjustments just to slowly start putting our education and our recently acquired knowledge at work here. And I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Kristen.
Oh
But
no.
regarding the cap rate, what would I do to the purchase price to increase the cap rate?
You would decrease the purchase price?
That's exactly right. Way to go. Way
Oh
to
my
go.
goodness. Whew. For those of you on YouTube, you saw sheer panic in my face.
Terror. She was in the middle of a plane crash right there. All right. So I just lowered it down to 201 and it increased our cap rate from 6.8 to 7.3. So, let's say that you had a personal opinion or a buyer who said, I mandate that I have a 7% cap rate. Well, that's okay. We can look at this property and say, as long as we can get it for about $212,000, then we can get a 7 cap. So if that's where your criteria end, then you're going to be looking at purchase price, rental rate, and maybe just tweaking, uh, verifying your expenses. We can't magically
Mhm.
eliminate expenses, but um, that's where that's going to end right there. So I'm gonna reset it back to where it started at, but I just wanted to go through that little exercise right there. We looked at the cap rate and we manipulated the purchase price by lowering the purchase price to increase the cap rate. We deployed less capital, and so we got a with the same amount of income. So since we had the same
Mhm.
income but we deployed less capital, we were effectively receiving a higher return on the lesser amount of capital that we deployed. So I'm going to click discard edits, and all that's gone now. Now, I'm going to click on the financial tab, and this is where we have lots of information at our fingertips here. So some of these things are directly related to what we've been talking about. Some of these are maybe some new concepts, but most of these that are new concepts are not nearly as complicated as the metrics being cap rate, cash on cash, and internal rate of return. So we don't need to spend a whole episode on a couple of these things. Um, this table over here called total investment and loan summary, it's telling us by breaking down the purchase price and the expected title charges and loan fees that we would be putting $61,125 into this property if we bought it for the purchase price and put 25% down. Um,
I really like that it breaks down all of those expenses, because especially for first time investors, the initial thought is, "Oh, I just have to put the down payment," and that's absolutely it, and then it doesn't take into account all of those other numbers that you just went over there for a total
yeah,
investment amount, which can seriously skew all of our financials that we were looking at the very top, just with the 3 metrics that we've been going over. If we don't have all of those expenses calculated in, we can skew some of our numbers up there.
we can, yes, and this is where verifying everything before we have absolute confidence and faith in these metrics that we're
Mhm.
putting up so high as what we're concerned about right now. I mean, I definitely want to know what the expected cash on cash return is of this property or any property, but I also want to understand the nuts and bolts that go into that to be sure there's not some outlier here that's falsely making it lower or higher than it really should be. So I'm gonna I can briefly go over these other KPIs up here. So we have our total investment at 61K. There's a thing called the ideal hold period on the screen here, which our software is calculated to be 10 years. What that's telling us is a 10-year hold period is the amount of time where the internal rate of return is not going to get any higher, or at least not very much higher. It may go up very slightly, like it says 11.4 here. If it doesn't go up at least a whole percentage point after that, that's where it says, hey, you're not really gaining any more return on your money by holding it longer. So we're saying that the hold period should be 10. But during that amount of time, it's saying that over 10 years, like this is not a percentage. These are just dollars. Anybody can relate to this. You invest $61,000, you leave it in the investment for 10 years, and that's going to grow to become worth $170,000. So that's
Wow.
pretty cool there. Um, the other metric that we have here is 2023 monthly cash flow. So just the first year, we just want to check this out. We get a total of $43 of expected monthly cash
Woohoo.
flow. Woohoo! Yeah, we could go to take the family to Whataburger or something. So anyway, rental rate affordability, that's a pretty interesting one. What that is, a 100, that's a index, and a 100 would mean that if you had the median income in this area and you rented a house that cost the median rental rate and you used a third of your income to qualify for it, that would be 100. If a house is higher on the index, it's more affordable, and if it's lower on the index, it's less affordable. 97 might as well be 100. So this house would be suitable for a family earning the median income could qualify to live in this house, which I think is important because we want to know, hey, is this
Mhm.
house right for our audience? The gross rent multiplier, I am not a fan. I dislike talking about the gross rent multiplier. Some people like to use it. It is the relationship between the annual rental income and the purchase price. It's a 10 on this house. It doesn't take into consideration expenses. It doesn't take into consideration amortization. It doesn't take into consideration loan payment. You might even have two houses that are very close to each other, and one of them has an HOA or a mandatory lawn care or something else, and the other one doesn't. It's a very, I don't know, like the gross rent multiplier is only on the income side, and it's kind of a tough one. So we're just it's there. It's a 10 on this house. Um, I'm gonna leave this page now. No, I take that back. I'm gonna look at the 2023 expenses. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of things real quick here. So our software, we agreed already that we think this thing's going to rent for 1875. We're going to leave that
Mhm.
alone. The software is picking up from the tax assessor that it's $2,400 of annual property tax. We're going to say that's accurate, and it's also given us $1,600 for property insurance. That seems realistic on a rental house that's $225,000. Um, we're not getting any HOA info, so we got that as a zero. But property management, I do have this configured for an 8% property management fee. So we got to pay our property manager. And then leasing commissions, we have it configured for, I'll show this a little bit more in a minute, but we have it configured for paying half of a month of rent every three
Mhm.
years. So if you're following along on YouTube, what you're not seeing $900 or whatever half of 1875 is, you're seeing $300 because we're not expecting to have that expense but once every 3 years. So we take the expense and then we divide it by 3, and that's how much we charge ourselves every year, so we smooth this out. We call that normalizing it. I'll show you right here though. There's a little toggle up here in the top right-hand corner that says raw. If I click the raw toggle, then what it does is it gives me $938 of a leasing commission in year one, and then it gives me zero in the next year and zero in the third year, and then it gives me our rental rate's actually going to grow every single year. So that 938 now grows to $1,000 of a leasing commission in the fourth year. That's probably how it'll really happen in real life, but generally speaking, when you're analyzing something on a long-term basis, you kind of spread the stuff out, you normalize it, you average it out because we don't really know when it's actually going to happen. So I'm going to turn that off, go back to normalized, and we're going to leave that alone. A couple other important things, and then I want to have a conversation about this because this is what's really important. We have property maintenance, $900 a year. I don't think you or I could either argue against that we would have $900 a year, or zero this year, but 1,800 next year. I mean, things happen. Things happen.
Yes.
So, and then the same thing on the capital expenditures. I know we already talked about that in the cap rate section because that's when we would have talked about net operating income and operating expenses.
Mhm.
But we also have to be saving up for those capital items such as carpet, air conditioner, roof, so on and so forth. So, Kristen, when you look at these expenses, do
Mhm.
you see any expenses that are bogus or could be entirely eliminated, or should we meaningfully adjust any of these in your opinion?
I don't believe so, because the expenses that are in there, I am a planner, and so I would like to see those spread out over a couple of years to make sure that I am saving what is needed to be saved in order to take care of the property. And also, I'm sure that we will have listeners that may disagree with this, but I believe in having a property manager, and so having the property management expenses set aside definitely important, but that would be the only one that I could consider that for some people may feel optional, right? Some people do have the capability to manage their properties themselves, which is fantastic, in which case those expenses could be taken off, right? However, if you're like myself and you believe in having a property manager, then we would keep those on. The rest of those, again, just depending for me on the age of the house and what we see back on the inspection report, I may even raise up the amount of money that we're holding out for maintenance. It looks like this house is a little bit older. It does look like it has been redone. So just depending what I'm getting back on that inspection report, I may hold out a little bit more for maintenance just because of the age of the house.
I love that. That's a perfect answer. So, that's a perfect answer. So, what are we spending here in property management anyway? We're spending $1,700. Okay, that is taking up a certain amount of our cash on cash return, and I'll get rid of it in a second, and we'll illustrate the point. Um, but I think that there's a point to be made that even if you're doing it yourself, you're still doing some work. And
Sure.
also, I know that some property management companies have marketing material that they've put out where they've done a study and they've shown that when properties are managed by a manager versus owner managed, you have longer lengths of occupancy and you're usually pushing rates even higher than if an owner becomes friends with the tenant and is scared to raise the rent for 5 years straight.
I've
So,
seen that happen so many times where people are have underperforming properties because I just like them,
yeah,
or, "Oh, this terrible thing happened to them, and I don't wanna raise the rent," or, "Oh, every December, I don't charge them rent," or something like that where they do it's a
right.
business, and it has to be treated as a business no matter what. But I do believe, Morgan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on those operating expenses, most of those are tax deductible, right? Like,
So
we can write off
we can, yeah. These
a
are
few
so
of those.
that's
I know we're not going down the tax route, but for at least for our operating expenses, all of those could be written off.
all of those can be written off, and that is a thing that's a little bit different than your primary residence. So I think,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's state or national, but you get to write off your yeah, it's a federal thing. You get to write off your property tax on your federal income tax, but at your home where you live, you don't get to write off your property insurance. But here at your rental house, you do. Same thing with maintenance at your house. I don't know of any reason why you'd be writing off expensing property maintenance unless it's like some portion of it for your home office. But with your property that you're renting out, then you do get to deduct that. Um, so all of these are a tax deduction, and so while the annual cash flow on this particular property is about $500, it's also generating a tax deduction. So there's depreciation and other things that are at play here. Um, yeah, I'm interested in looking at the effect here, though. I'm going to go over to the tab that's called parameters. That's where we adjust the
Mhm.
financial parameters. And since we're talking about property management, I want to look at the difference between having a manager and not having a manager, but I want to look at it on all the numbers. So let's just go back to it real
Sure.
quick. We're at a 6.6 cap rate, a zero point 0.8 cash on cash, and an 11.4 IRR. I'm going to change it to 0 on the management fee. All right.
And then you also need to take off the leasing, commission as well.
Do you think that so your assumption here is that a person who's self-managing would also, I guess they'd put it on Zillow or something like that and they would do it themselves. So
I
let's
mean,
go to 0
typically
there.
We can, or what I've seen as well is, most of the time, if somebody is going to do just a lease only on a property, they'll typically charge 100% of the first month's rent. So, I mean, either way
Good
that you
point.
wanna do that, take it down to 0 or
Put
bump
it up
that
to
up to
100.
100. I mean, however
Yeah.
that would work, because I think that having a good tenant, that's key.
Oh yeah, it is for sure, and we'll look at that here. Okay, so let's go to the. I'm gonna do it all myself. I'm gonna list it on Zillow. I'm gonna have Zillow screen the tenants, and I'm not gonna pay a manager. So that increased our cap rate from 6.6 to 7.5. That's a decent bump. But what it
Mhm.
really did is it boosted our cash on cash from point 0.8 to 4.2. So if I'm willing to do that work, how much more am I going to make here? Let's tell them what they won. Um, Now instead of making $43 a month, I'm now making 215. So we could take the whole family to a much nicer establishment than Whataburger for dinner once a month now because we're doing some
Sure.
work. I would just hope that the phone call for the leaky pipe doesn't occur while I'm at Dave and Buster's with my family. Um,
Yep.
but um, but anyway, that's okay. So, and then the IRR, I feel like the IRR is the one that went up the smallest amount. It went up from 11.4 to 13.9 as a percentage gain of like moving the IRR. I think that was the lowest
Mhm.
percentage. Um, Now, I want to do something else though. Let's go back and add the monthly management fee and let's look at vacancy. So right now we have this thing set up to where a person's going to come in this house every 3 years, and every 3 years we're going to have a month of vacancy. That's pretty realistic. I mean, if you're really on top of it, you might be able to get it done slightly quicker, but I mean, I don't care if you've got a lease signed before the current tenant moves out. They have to move out. You're going to need to do some make ready or cleaning it. There's going to be a period of time. I mean, it could even be longer, but we're just going to use 30 days. What happens if we're always attracting crummy tenants? I just
Either
put it
that, or you live in a place like San Antonio where you have, traditionally a lot of military families that
it's a
are
turnover.
PCSing in and out. Yeah. So either negative tenants, or we just live in a place that you just have more tenants, like more moving happening on a more frequent basis.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good point. So in your market, 3 years might not be how long people are going to stay. So I just changed it to 1, and it had a similar effect on all of these metrics as not having a manager did. So when I dropped it from 3 years of average tenancy to 1 year of average tenancy, it dropped my cap rate from 6.6 to 5.8. It made my cash on cash go negative to negative
Wow.
2.1. And my internal rate of return dropped down to 9.6. And just to bring that to real dollars, remember our original baseline was we were making 43 bucks a month. Now we're losing
Mhm.
105. So it's pretty much a $150 swing negative to have someone turning over every year, and it was a $150 positive swing to do all the management and leasing by yourself, but again assuming that you're able to do that. Um, so I'm really kind of goofing around with the numbers here to show the effect that they have, but a point that I'm trying to illustrate here is these expenses all exist.
Mhm.
We were able to eliminate the property management, although we had to take that responsibility on ourselves. But we cannot
Sure.
just go to this property and eliminate the property tax. We cannot eliminate the maintenance or insurance. These are all real things. So, Kristen, if I'm looking at this here, and I agree that all of these numbers are the expenses that I like, what would I do if I wanted to get a higher than a 0.8% cash on cash? But let's agree from now moving forward, we're not going to fire the manager. So we're going to hang on to the manager. We're going to let them lease the property. How could I get a higher cash on cash return? And let me ask you a question
Well,
first of all. First of all,
sure.
we already agreed we can't change the expenses. The expenses are the expenses. Can I just start renting the house out for $2,100 a month?
Well, it'd be really nice if you could just do that. However, the thing there is, well, yeah, it's very easy to say that, Morgan. Yeah, let's just rent it out for $2,100 a month. But if the market is only supporting 18.5, then you can go ahead and you increase the number of days of vacant if we're going to rent it out much higher than what the average rental rate is. It's easy to say, it's more difficult to do because it's supply and demand. And if everywhere around you is only supporting 1875, we could factor in we're going to get 21, but then the other lever that we're going to have to push is our vacancy time. So to answer that question, whatever the market is renting at, that's where I suggest we stay because we just looked at how vacancy is seriously going to affect our numbers. So if we're looking for higher cash on cash, that's nice in theory, but in my opinion, it's not going to help us get a higher cash on cash because our vacancy will then be much longer than what we need it to, just trying to chase a couple $100 a month.
I,
Does that make sense?
I think you're 100% right. I mean, yes, you're just swapping dollars. If you're chasing it, I mean, you're saying
Exactly.
I'm gonna wait for this person who's doesn't have the internet and they can't see that I'm overcharging for the house. So they're going to pay $2,100, but I'm going to wait 3 months to locate them. Okay, so we agree that it's dangerous or risky, maybe, to try to push that rental
I'm
rate.
going to go with it's wrong.
It's
It's wrong
wrong.
to do.
It's wrong. Love it. Perfect. That's black and white. So, but I'm okay. So we're saying we can't change the rental rate. We can't fire the manager. We can't change any of our other expenses. How will you get me a higher cash on cash return, Kristen?
Great question, Morgan. Then question back to you if you're my buyer and we're talking through this, could we put less money down on the property? Would that increase our cash on cash because now we're putting less money into the property?
So mathematically, that is definitely the answer. So if I take 25 and drop it down to 15, I've now got a wait. Oh, because we're so thin on the line. Interesting. There's like a bell curve on this. I was expecting it to go up, not down. But because it's so
Well, could
close,
you well, I'm seeing that go down. Could you explain to me why that is going down? Because I didn't expect that to happen.
you know what? I was thinking about this backwards. You have to have a cap rate that's greater than your interest rate for that to work. This
Mm.
is getting a little out there, Kristen. But if I was to change the interest rate to 3%, I'm getting an 8.9% cash on cash. And then if I put a little bit less money down, I'm getting a 9.6. So this is now we have to have an aside and talk about what's called positive leverage.
Okay.
Um,
This is good.
this
I
is
feel like
this
this
is
is
good.
putting it all together.
It is. It is. So if it if you can earn a higher return on money than the bank is charging you, then you're better off using more of the bank's money and less of your money. So in the original scenario, I was using 25% of my money and 75% of the bank's money. And I was putting that money to work on a property that's generating a 6.6% cap rate. That's the original plan here. Okay, I mean the property still generates that actually. The property generates a 6.6. Now, when we were originally talking, I had a 7% interest rate, which means that I'm actually paying more for the money that I'm borrowing from the bank than the property is able to effectively generate it on its own. Now that's only on a cap rate and cash on cash basis. That's not IRR. There's other factors at play
Mhm.
on IRR such as amortization and appreciation. And my original, just my instinct, my natural instinct was I was going to say to you, well, Kristen, if I use less of my own money and more of the bank's money, I'm going to get a higher cash on cash return. But what we figured out there was that since the interest rate is higher than the cap rate, every penny of additional bank money that I used was working against me.
It's gonna it's gonna cost way more money to have it, which that makes a lot of sense. And it seems applicable to how the market is right now with, higher interest rates.
Yes, that's just how it is. So what's the solution? Okay, so remember I said mathematically you would lower the down payment. If we had positive leverage, that would be the case. But the backstop there is that loans for investment properties generally require a 25% down payment.
Mhm.
But the unique situation here is how do I get a higher cash on cash? Well, Morgan, you use more of your own money and less of the expensive bank money. So
Yep.
we can increase the down payment, let's say to 40, and now I'm getting a 3.4% cash on cash. Now,
Wow.
did you notice another number change at the same time besides the cash on cash?
Did the IRR go down?
It did. Because I'm using
Mhm.
less of the bank's money, my gain over time on their money is now decreased. So these metrics
Gotcha.
all play with and against each other. Now, to just sort of re-illustrate this fictitious land that we could be living in where I could get a 3% interest rate, if I was to use more of the bank's money, I would not only have a higher cash on cash return, but I would have a higher internal rate of return. Um,
Yeah.
Lowering your down payment and using more bank money gives you a higher IRR. But depending on your interest rate, it's going to adversely affect your cash on cash. And that might be hard to follow if you're just listening to the audio, but you'd be able to see how these numbers are changing on the screen here in front of us. But I think we need to talk about the deals that we can do today because we can't do 3% real estate deals today, or loans anyway. We can do 7% loans today. So let's go back to it here. Let's say that I am demanding a 2% cash on cash return. We just checked it out. One thing we could do is we could increase the down payment. The final
Mhm.
thing that we could do there, we actually messed with it previously. What is it, Kristen, that we can do to get a higher cash on cash?
Is it to buy it for less
Pay
money?
less. So we could pay less. That'll affect both the cap rate and the cash on cash. So let's say that I'm willing to come out of pocket to 30%. That actually got me straight to a 2.0, but I'm demanding a 2.5. I'm saying, listen, Kristen, if you're going to help me buy this piece of property, then I'm demanding a 2.5% cash on cash. And you say, okay, well, look, if we can buy this thing for 218, then we can get you a 2.5 cash on cash if you'll put 30% down. And probably I'm okay with that. I mean, if I was willing to put $61,000 down, maybe I'm willing to put $70,000 down because I'm getting a higher cash on cash return. So,
Absolutely, and I think that adjusting the purchase price is more applicable today than it was even 2 years ago, right? We're able to purchase it for a little bit less money because the trends that we saw, I don't know, even a year ago was we were paying over and above asking price almost every single time. But now that interest rates are going up, I think that buyers have a little bit more flexibility to be able to offer, in my opinion, a more attractive rate because if we're going against two offers and one of them is 30% down for a little bit less money and another one is fully financed, I'm probably going to go with the people that have more money, knowing that that loan more than likely will go through because interest rates and the way that all of that works, that person who's fully financed may not qualify in three
yep.
months whenever we go to close because interest rates have changed. So, I mean, for the sellers, it just makes more sense for them to go with the offer with more capital. So I think that buyers are getting a little bit more flexibility there to potentially even offer a little bit less. And this
That's
seems realistic to me.
You're exactly right. So I think that given that we can't get a crazy low interest rate, then if we're looking to get a little bit higher return on our cash, then we could put a little more down. And that's not always a bad thing. You don't have to put the minimum amount of money into a property. If you are looking to deploy $100,000 into an investment and get a return on that investment, well, then, I mean, gosh, we could change the down payment to here we go. I just changed it to a 44% down payment. I've now got to put $100,000 into this thing, but I'm getting a 4.2% cash on cash. So that may be exactly what I'm after, and now I'm happy. Um,
Could we
so
take a look really quick at what the cash flow is there? Does that affect our cash flow whenever we have a 44% down payment? And what are we getting now that we're at a 44%? Oh yeah.
Sure. So our original cash flow was $500 a month. I don't want to go change it. I just remember the annual cash flow was $500 a month, and now it's expected to be $4,200 a month. Now, you know
Per
what
year.
per year
$4,200
for the
per
first
year.
year.
Yeah.
For the first year. Now,
Right.
you can look at this however you want to look at it. You would say, "Yeah, but we had to put an extra $39,000 into the property and all I'm getting out is an extra $3,700, whatever that turns out to be." Fair enough. but you do have the investment working for you. You do have the money locked up in the investment, and it is still earning this cash on cash return, and it is still earning this internal rate of return. So we're probably happy about that. Um, Also, it might have been a condition of your loan that you might have had to put a little bit more down. 25% down might be the bare minimum. For whatever reason, the lender might say you got to put 30% down or something. So
Mhm.
it's just really, I don't think that we could have a podcast and say the minimum cash on cash for every market should be a certain amount, because some people would be very happy having a slightly negative cash on cash just to have successfully bought a property and be glad to see that it's appreciating. Those buyers
Mhm.
exist. But it's important to be able to say, I have this goal of either breaking even or making 4% or only losing 4%. And so now we know how to measure it. And now we know how to find a property that can fit that particular goal. And I'll say this also, as you explore your area more, you should start to have an understanding of why a property becomes a standout. If you
Mhm.
start studying these properties and you're like, hey, I'm seeing a lot of 5.5 cap rates. I'm seeing a lot of properties that make sense when I look at all the expenses and I look at the purchase price and I look at the rental rate. A lot of them are 5.5. And then this guy comes along and it's a 6.8. You're saying, man, that's worth buying. That's a good property. All the other ones are 5.5, but this is a 6.8. So I should be putting more attention on this property.
Absolutely. And I think too that as somebody continues to do that research and learn their area, they're also going to learn what is most important to them and what not only just how do they want to buy the property, but how do they want to run it as a rental, right? Do they want to have a property manager? Do they not want to have a property manager? Do they think they should hold out more for expenses, and truly understanding not just buying the property being the end goal, but truly thinking the long term of how is this property going to run as a business? Because that's what it is. Whenever you buy it and it's a rental, it's a business. And how am I going to run this rental business that I now have, to look at it as more than just down payment, more of how it's going to operate? Because that is, as we just demonstrated, going to push and pull so many levers as far as how the property will perform.
Yep. Yep. There's so many things that you can change and you can adjust. But at the point that you've got them all set to reality, then you need to start looking at the final things that you can change. And you can definitely change the purchase price. You can definitely get it to the point that to the offer that you can make, and you can hope the buyer accepts it. And they might, because we talked about in this market, they're not selling as fast as they were. But you can also just say, well, this thing's offered for 225. The most I can pay is 205. You offer it, they say no. We're not doing it. We just simply won't. And you say, okay, great. I tried. I'm going to move on to the next one. And then you can keep on looking. So,
Yep, absolutely.
now something else that we can do here to help educate ourselves about these metrics, or gain a little bit of perspective, is I want to go back to the search results here, and I want to just look at some of the houses that look somewhat similar. Okay, so this one here that's brown looks somewhat similar. And it's a 4.7% cap rate. So I really just clicked on the first house that I saw when I did this search, and it magically happened to be a 6.6% cap rate. Um, this one's a 4.7. It's a 7.6 IRR. Really making our first house look like, if we're looking to invest in this market, like it was a pretty good buy. Um, ooh,
For
I
sure,
got one.
because even just a small note on that other one, it's 700 square feet smaller.
Oh,
That
look at
second one
that.
that you pulled up there.
Way smaller. Now, this is
Yeah,
interesting. Check this one out, Kristen. We've got one that's a 9% cap rate, and it's 2,400 square feet. Let's open it up and see if there's something about it
and it
that's.
has a third bedroom.
Yeah,
The
it
other one only
does.
had 2.
So, well, look at this thing. It is,
I don't know, I'm intrigued to see what the inside of this looks like. I see
all right.
175 and that other one was 275. I feel like this one may be not
It
so
might not.
pretty on the
It might not
inside.
have quite the same kitchen. Oh, wait, hold on. I can see the photos ahead.
Oh,
It's not updated.
well, no, it's not. But it's not
It's not as bad as it could have
terrible.
been. You could put a coat of
Oh, those
paint on.
floors
Whoa,
need
those floors need
the
some work.
floors need to be
Yes.
redone. Oh, it looks like we may have some foundational issues just from this is the wholesaling background. All of the things we need to fix here.
Okay, so let's
It
have some
just
fun
looks
with this.
crooked.
Let's have some fun with this then. So what I'm going to do is we have two options, all right? So our first option is this house, this white house, and we're going to buy it for
Turnkey.
$218,000 turnkey. Our numbers are I'm going to bring it back down to 25%. No, I take that back. I'm actually going to leave it at 40% down at 100,000 invested. Let's make a fake person here, Kristen. Our person
Mhm.
has $100,000. This will be fun. So we've invested $100,000 into this house, and if I'm the investor, you're hitting all the numbers that I've told you. Is that it has to be more than a 6.5% cap rate, it has to be more than a 4% cash on cash, and it has to be more than a 10% IRR. So great, this is a candidate, and if it's the only candidate, we're buying it.
Mhm.
Let's You said wholesaling and you got my wheels turning. Give me an amount of money that you think we would need to invest into this Cornelius Avenue property to bring it up to speed.
Let me just make a guesstimate. How many square feet was it? It was
2400
2,400.
square feet.
I don't know. Those floors were pretty bad, Morgan.
They were pretty bad. I'll give you that. They were pretty bad. How many
And the
bucks
kitchen
are you thinking on a per
kitchen
square
looked
foot
like it need
basis? Is that what you're doing?
I was trying to get just a general, like, if we had to do something to every part of the house, like, I always like to go in with, like, a per square foot of, like, what would this look like at a per square foot basis for us to go in and need to do it, and for me, like, $65 a square foot is, like, we gotta do a lot of stuff
That would be a
to
ton of
this
money.
house.
Oh my
I
gosh, that
know.
would be a ton of
So,
money.
I know, but the floors and I don't know if foundation is a thing in Indiana,
I don't have any
but, I
idea.
mean, me neither, but let's just say okay,
Could we put 50K into it, you think, and get it to where it needs to be?
with the right contractors, I think we could get something for
Okay,
$50,000.
so let's say we're gonna put $50,000 into this property. You've now increased my investment because I'm assuming I can't finance the 50. Okay, we're only going to be able to
No.
get a loan
Well,
on what
maybe.
we started. I mean, with different loan products, if it was a not an
Right,
investment loan, because it would either be a hard money loan or it would
right.
be a like one of those home path or home steps loans, which is not for investors.
Mhm.
But we're talking
Right.
about a standard mortgage here. So with a standard mortgage, let's say we got to get a loan on the house and put 25% down on
Mhm.
the house, and then we're going to put another 50K in.
50,000. Yep.
So tell me the property is worth as is 175. We're going to put 50 into it. We're going to get something more than just 50 out of it. So is it worth
Mhm.
250, 265 when we're done, you think?
No. Because that other house that we were looking at was 225, right? And
It
so
was
if we're only putting
225.
at 50K, we're not going
This
to
one's
get the same
bigger
product
though.
as that
This
other
one's
house.
bigger. Hang
It is.
on. This one's bigger. It's 700 square feet larger. 127 a square foot's the other one. Man, you make a really good point. It's another bedroom. It's another bedroom and it's bigger though. Let's say 250. Let's say the other house was remodeled more. Let's say the other house was
Okay.
definitely remodeled more than we're doing for our 50. So we're not going to get quite the same per square foot, but we got 6 or 700 more square feet and we got another bedroom. So I think we're
Right,
still
because that's about $100 a square feet, so that tracks.
okay. There we go.
I
So
mean,
it's
like,
less per
because
square
the
foot
other one you
total.
said was 127? Yeah, I
127.
think that
Okay. So we're
so I
coming
think
in at
putting
about
us at
100.
104, yeah, I think
There we
that
go.
works.
So
That
check
works.
this out. All that I did was I said, Morgan, we got a problem to solve. We got to invest $100,000 into a house in Indianapolis that we're comfortable with that'll get me at least a 6% cap rate, a 4% cash on cash, and a greater than 10% IRR. We took on a little bit of we were willing to accept some risk, and we are considering now a little bit of a fixer upper. And I've got a 7% cap rate, a 4.6% cash on cash, and a 12% IRR.
Did we
So
also put in here for our rehab days to get that before we start earning our
I
money
did
on it, or
not.
is that not something we'd wanna consider?
I mean, I think we should do it. I mean, I think we're definitely trying to compare these opportunities. So what do you think we can get that done in like a month, month and a half?
Depends on how fast our contractors work.
Let's say we
So let's
don't
just
have
say
the
60
fastest
days.
60 days. Okay, so I was going to say 45. We'll do 60. How does it do? Survey says still super similar. Like it bumped us down a
Perfect.
very small amount.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
if I'm willing to put the 50 grand into it, and hope that the contractor doesn't find all the things that they find on television when they do the remodeling and whatever. I mean, this would be theoretically a superior investment, at least on the performance side. Now, this
And
other
how
house is
much was that one
pretty.
renting out for? The second one? I'm sorry,
The
how much were we
second one we got
19.
1961. Which for that
Okay.
many square feet and an extra bedroom, I think it's totally believable that we would be getting the
I
other one.
agree.
I mean, again, we're not putting in the quality of kitchen and bathroom that the first house had, but it's renting for 1875. Our new one isn't as attractive on the inside, but it's larger, so we're still expecting a slightly
Mhm.
higher rent from it. So
Sure. No, that makes total sense to me.
so this is pretty cool. So we just looked at two different properties. We found them just by searching the MLS on Discover, and we successfully sized up two investment options for ourselves or for our clients, whatever it is, assuming that they have $100,000 to invest, and we used our tools here. Now, before we essentially conclude the analysis part of this, I do want to dive into the changes over the years, because I think that we would be remiss if we didn't look at how that's going to happen. um, so I want to bring attention to the final section that I'd like to look at here, which is inflation and depreciation. Our model assumes that over time the rent's going to go up. We can choose how much we want it to go up, but I'm going to say, for purposes of this analysis, we're going to get rental increases of an average of 2.5% per year. Um, over the last 30 years, the CPI, the Consumer Pricing Index, has been 2.27. So if we say 2.5, we're real close to that. We're going to say the expenses are going to go up 2%, and our property is going to appreciate at a rate of 3.5% per year moving forward. Now, what that does in reality is it says to us over here on our financial overview that our property value is going to increase. Today it's worth 226. We're back to the original house, by the way. But then it's going to be worth 234, 242, 251, 260, 269. So that's pretty cool. It becomes worth more money. And our 1800 bucks turns into 1900, turns into 2000, turns into $2100 of rent. What that does in reality is that in the first year we were making $4,200, but if you fast forward 10 years, now we're making $8,000 a year. So we're making more money every single year as time goes on. And in 15 years, we're making $10,000 a month. So that's pretty cool. Um, what would happen if we changed those, though? So let's say, what do you want to do with the rent? You think it's going to go up faster or slower?
I would say it's probably gonna go up faster.
Okay, so let's change it to 5. Let's see what happens. Okay. I'm going to say it's going to change at 5. Click save. There we go. So that boosted my IRR significantly on this property. Oh no, I lost my changes when I left my spot there. We were gonna buy it for 218 and invest $100,000. There we go. We're right back to where we were. Sorry about that. It's now going to go up at 5%. So you've now boosted your IRR. You haven't boosted the cash on cash in the first year. You haven't boosted the
Mhm.
cap rate in the first year. But at 2.5, our IRR was going to be 10.6. And if we can manage to get 5%, it's 13.4. We don't really need to dive into this like forever, but just keep in mind when we talked about internal rate of return, that had to do with how much money we were going to send out the door when we bought the property, and then how much money we were going to get every single year coming back. Well, by doing more drastic rental rate increases, we're getting more money every single year. So, what that's telling me here is that for the first 4 years, or 5 years, I was barely getting to 2,100. But now in the first 5 years, I'm getting to $2,300 of rental income. So that's a little bullish. I mean, that's definitely a little bit of a bullish outlook. I mean, you're assuming you're going to be able to really push those rents, but now it's got us to where at the end of 10 years, we're now bringing in $13,000 a month, which is pretty awesome. A year, $13,000 a year, about $1,000 a month at the end of 10 years, as opposed to I think it was about $7,000 or $8,000 previously. So I just wanted to touch on there's these inputs over here you can use on the parameters tab, and anything you're doing, however you're modeling, be sure and take a look at how you're projecting your rental rate to increase and your property to appreciate over the years, because those are the metrics that are going to have a lot of effect on the internal rate of return. So, Kristen, do you have a question on any one of these things, or do you feel like, I mean, I know we manipulated the controls and we did a couple of things, but is there another scenario or anything that you want to look at here to be sure that we've done a complete analysis?
No, I think that we have pulled all of the levers that are the most attractive levers to pull, right?
Sure.
Increasing our rental rate, decreasing our amount of vacancy, seeing how it looks without a property manager, with a property manager. And so I think that we looked at those. My favorite part was whenever we got to compare the two properties and see one where we're putting in almost the same amount of money into a property in different ways and how that affects, what we're doing with the property, taking on a little bit of risk with adding some rehab to a property or buying a turnkey property. I just like looking at all of the different scenarios. So I feel like we went through and did almost everything that you could do to a property whenever you're comparing two that you're looking at purchasing.
I think we did too. And I mean, just to do a quick recap there, we did not change the expenses once we agreed that the expenses were the expenses, because no
Yes.
matter how much you want to just magically make the cap rate better or make the cash on cash better, you can only change what you can realistically change. And we can hope and pray for low maintenance, but we still have to be conscientious that it's a reality in the world. So you also can't make someone sell you a property for half of what they have it listed for. But at some point, that's really what it comes down to. Is I've pushed my rental rate as far as I can push my rental rate. I've got the maximum down payment percentage that I can possibly put down. If it's still not meeting your numbers, and you're not just moving on, then all you can do is try to negotiate as hard as you can on that purchase price and get it down. But here I love that we just took the last three episodes: cap rate, cash on cash, IRR, and we applied them in real life and manipulated our analysis here to see how each one of those metrics is affected by various things on the page. But it also, at the same time, all three of them were working together to give us a complete picture of how the property is supposed to perform.
I what I like a lot about looking at investment properties is, while yes, Morgan, we talked very briefly about how nice the kitchen in the first property was that we looked at and how not nice the kitchen was at the second property that we looked at, but that was never a deciding factor on moving forward if we were going to purchase a property or not. It was truly based on the numbers, and that's what I think is so fascinating about investment properties is I don't have to live in it, right? It's not for me. I don't have to envision myself in the kitchen.
Yeah,
I just have to make sure that for what I'm looking for and the goals that I'm trying to achieve, is this property going to be the vehicle that's going to get me there? And I
yeah,
think that that's sometimes where um, newer investors or maybe even seasoned investors, maybe you've seen this as well, as they do get hung up on, well, but I love this house. I love the kitchen. I think that my tenants will just love this part of it and they're willing to spend more money. However, what they're not looking at is their long-term goals and what they're trying to do with the property. And so that's what
yeah.
I like most about investment real estate. Whenever I did residential, like selling and buying properties, man, everything was all about, oh, but the walls are so beautifully painted and all of that. And then whenever we moved into the investment world, it's like, what am I trying to accomplish? Is this property going to actually get me there? And that is all that we talked about today was, does this property meet our financial goals and how can we achieve better results for ourselves?
You are right on the head there. So I think what we'll probably do is I mean I do think that we basically we summarized everything we wanted to talk about here, but this is a little bit thought provoking that I want to work in the next episode that we filmed together about being a little bit more specific on sizing up your own goals. So now that we know what these metrics are, and now that we know how to put them into an analysis, let's talk about how to decide for ourselves or possibly working with our clients to help them figure out what their metrics and what their hurdles should be. So I think we'll do that for the next episode. But this seems like an ideal place to leave off here. And I'm so glad that we could run through this. And Kristen, thank you for joining me here.
Thank you, Morgan. It was a pleasure.
All right, and everyone, y'all have a great one, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.